Hey everybody, it's Alec here, and we're back at it again with another episode of the Smashing Brands podcast. Today I'm joined by
Albert Pellissier.
Albert Pellissier. Compared to most of the guests I have on my podcast, I would say I probably have known Albert the longest. That actually might be, or at least compared to most of the people. Albert and I have known each other for years, and I'm really excited to have a great conversation with him. And he just came out with a new book, which I'm thrilled to ask him more about and just see what kind of what kind of value he can deliver to the audience. And I know just based on our relationship, he has tons of wisdom and experience to pull from. So, Albert, the first question I like to ask is, how do you spend your time on planet Earth?
How do I spend my time? I'm gonna turn 62 this weekend. So just to give you a little perspective, I've been in this mentoring coaching space mm, pretty heavily for the last 9 years, which really came after maybe 5 years of my own personal journey. So, you add it all up together, a good dozen, 14 years has just really all been um, what I really call essentially the spiritual part of my journey, as odd as it sounds. I mean, really, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a businessman my entire life, but there comes a point where, yeah, there's like a spiritual component to business even that I think needs to be discovered.
Yeah.
So what do I do now? I pretty much have my practical day-to-day businesses, which are in commercial and multifamily real estate. Those are all managed by other people. And, I spend most of my time doing the part that I like, which is coaching and mentoring and writing. And, probably most people, my neighbors probably think I'm semi-retired or
Mm.
retired, because
Yeah.
I work from home and just have a nice house and a nice backyard with a pool. And I think a lot, and then synthesize that thinking into avenues and ways to really, it's like, how can I benefit other people? So that's really what I spend most of my time doing, is trying to use my thought to see if it can help others in some significant way.
And you got a wonderful family.
Thank you. Yeah. 3 kids, and I'm a brand new empty nester. So now it's yeah, back to just me and the wife, and we're about to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary. So that was
Wow.
part of a long-term marriage.
My parents got married in 1990.
Okay. Yeah. So they're right on track.
I was like 35th anniversary. That sounds so familiar. That's why. Anyway, so there was a point in your life, I want to say this was maybe, I don't remember off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, you had basically everything that society said that you should have had. You had the wife, the family, the big house. I think the house you still live in currently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And great investments, the net worth, all of that. However, there is just something, and this is very common in a lot of entrepreneur stories. Of course, your part is unique in several ways, but there was a point where you knew that something was wrong. And if I remember correctly, you were just like a total asshole, right? Or as your wife might have put it, like
You,
you
you
were not a
know,
very happy person.
no, I wasn't happy. I wouldn't say, I mean, I can be an asshole. It's more of I was grouchy, that was the
Yeah.
word. It's like, oh man, stay away from dad today. He's grouchy. So
Uh,
that was really the messaging. She was shielding the kids from bouts of grouchiness. And, there
oh,
was, there was in some sense no real practical reason for me to be grouchy with all the things you laid out. Yeah, I did everything the way I was supposed to, and I had everything you were supposed to have. And it was even a mystery to me, how can I have done everything right and followed the path and things came together? Why am I grouchy?
mhm.
And that's what I wanted to know. It's like, obviously the path that, quote unquote, society leads you on is not telling you everything you need to know. There must be some other missing ingredient. And because I was grouchy, I really just felt compelled to figure out what was that mystery missing piece that I had no idea what it was that I needed to add to my puzzle, to my equation. And and
Yeah.
and that happened. I was 48 at the time. So exactly really almost 14 years ago today was like when I set off on, I said to myself, I'm going to spend the next 10 years trying to figure out what it is that makes a person happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened after that? Like, and how long, what was that process like towards really discovering yourself? And then how did that play into launching like your coaching career?
Okay, so this is really fascinating to me. What really prompted at least me to get off my ass and like try to find some answer to it was all those businesses, that were kind of affording that living at the time. They took a turn for the worse. And as I started to see kind of like the framework, of my this what would you call it? Just a material existence, start to collapse. And I needed the money. I had kids in school, I had mortgages, I had car notes, insurance, and all.
Yeah.
As it started to collapse, my thought was this. I was like, I know if I put my mind to it, I can get back in here and I can turn all of these things around. I knew that without a doubt. I
Hmm.
said, however, uh, I had all of it, a month ago, and I was grouchy and grumpy and kind of miserable in some sense. So why am I going to go work so hard just to get that back, only to be at the same place where I really still don't feel like I want to feel? So I
Yeah.
need to add an extra part of the component. Like not only did I have to get it back going again, which was just going to take a little time and attention and focus, but
Yeah.
can I do it in a different way that incorporates some other layer, this other missing part? And so I was actually in a lot of pain, Alec, of just confusion of what to do, and just out of a sense of desperation. Um, and this may sound crazy because it's so simple, but I was reading a book, oh, As a Man Thinketh.
Hmm.
Have you ever read that?
Yes.
It's a short book. I mean, I think it's 15 pages, but I really liked what the author was saying in that 15 pages. I started reading some of his other writings. Can't even think of what his name is right off the top of my head, but I started reading some of his other writings. And this guy was from England, and this was in the late 1800s that he was writing all this stuff that obviously he was way ahead of its time. And he kept mentioning, he said, a man will never truly be what he's destined to be unless he meditated. And
Mm.
I really had no experience with meditation. I kind of thought it was sort of a woo-woo type thing and everything, but I respected the guy's writing so much. I thought to myself I was going to, give it a try.
Mhm.
So when I'm in, I'm all in. And so I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but what I started doing was I started waking up early each morning before the kids needed to get up and go to school. And I would go sit in the dark in my living room, and I would just sit there on a cushion and, what I thought was meditating, which was just kind of clearing my mind. And I committed to an hour a day, which
Mhm.
was a lot. But what I quickly found was when I sat kind of in, it was still, the sun wasn't even up yet. When I sat in that meditative space daily for an hour, my mind would really organize itself and I would get a lot of creative ideas. So you're not supposed to do this in meditation, but I started keeping a legal tablet sitting right next to me. And I would open my eyes and I would take notes because I would come up with thoughts that I didn't want to forget.
Yeah.
And so it kind of threw off my meditation because I'm trying to clear my mind, right? But I didn't want to forget. So instead of stressing about it, I just took notes while I was meditating. And when I took those notes, just things would pop up, like people I should contact and reach. And then after I would get up from my meditation, I would just call or reach out to those, sometimes the people I've never met before, but I would schedule an appointment and go have lunch with them or go meet them. And there were times when I would show up to these people's office and they would say, "So what do you hear about?" And I would kind of tell them the story, and I'd say, "Actually, I don't even know what I'm here about, but I just had kind of a creative thought that I should meet you, and so I'm here to come see why should I meet you, And so
Mm.
I would really put them in a funny position because they weren't sure what to even say to me, but it was interesting. So there were three people that came up on this list over a short course of thing, and the short version of the story is One was a coach, one was a speaker, a public speaker, and one was a healer. And I ended up realizing about 3 years later that essentially what I had put together was I was a speaker, a healer, and a coach, and it came to me one day that those three things that dropped into my meditative thought, it really ended up kind of guiding me to the right mentors and people. And they were what I ended up becoming.
Yeah, so how did you know who to reach out to? Was it a name or?
So I'll give you an example. I don't know if you had any sports fans out there, but there was a famous LSU basketball coach, Dale Brown, and he had coached Shaquille O'Neal. He was the guy who actually went and recruited Shaquille O'Neal.
Mm,
And I wasn't a basketball fan. I'd never been to a LSU basketball game, but one of the names popped up was Dale Brown.
mm,
Another one was, and it wasn't a name, it was the owner of a local yoga studio. And I totally pictured this person in my meditation as a man. And then the other one was a guy who owned a local pizza franchise. And I had eaten there, before. I never really didn't really know the owner, but I remember him starting this pizza chain when he was a 19-year-old kid. As far as I assumed, he was just a restaurateur.
the guy in your mastermind, right? Or was in your mastermind same guy?
No, it was a different guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is just a young local guy. So, in other words, those were the three names I got. The yoga, owner. Turns out the yoga owner was actually a woman, and that led me to do yoga and do all kinds of healing work with her. The pizza guy, his name was D'Angelo. He had his chain of D'Angelo's pizzas. It turned out he was really no longer running his restaurants. He was a business coach, and he
Mm,
had, he ended up putting me. I didn't hire him as a coach, but he said, maybe you should talk to this guy, and he started just introducing me to coaches. I didn't really know that was a thing, honestly, at that moment. And then the strangest one was Dale Brown, who was a local celebrity, because he was a championship basketball coach,
yeah.
winning that. And again, I'd never seen this guy in person in my entire life. Now, here's the weird part. I write this down on the tablet, and within a week, no more than a week, and I swear to you, this is true. My family, we went to this local Greek restaurant that we eat at probably once a week. And one evening, it was one of those places that kind of they stay open, they close at 8:30. They're only open like 5 to 8:30. You got to get in there and eat, and they only want to work, during the peak times. We walk in there kind of close to closing time. The restaurant is completely empty except for one table, and sitting at that table is Coach Dale Brown and his grandson.
Wow.
And the whole restaurant's empty. And within the week, I had written his name on this piece of paper, and then here he is sitting in the restaurant. So,
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person who wants to go up to a celebrity and say, "Hey, give me your autograph" or anything. I don't want to bother him, but I'm sitting there at dinner and I'm thinking to myself, what is the odds of this? And so I waited till he was finished dinner, and it looked like he was about to get up, and I went over and excused myself and
Mm,
introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, I don't remember what I told him. Oh, I told him I was interested in public speaking, and I knew he did a lot of it." So he reached in his wallet, he gave me a card, he told me to call him Monday morning, and we ended up having a conversation, and he sent me really just like a packet of resources and notes he had jotted down. He was like a real coach. He wanted to uplift everyone who came into his life, whether they were basketball players or just a guy coming up to him in a Greek restaurant. And look, the stuff he sent me, Alec, it really changed my entire um, idea and conception of just what a professional speaker was.
mm,
And the tips and stuff he had in there was like all his favorite tips. They
yeah.
really just changed the whole way that I spoke and presented in an audience. And I would only realize really later when I was doing a speech somewhere that story really led to, yeah, one was a coach. The pizza guy became a coach. The yoga owner was really a healer, and then Dale Brown was a public speaker.
Yeah.
And so how can I explain that? I don't know. It seems a little bit magical. The one that had no idea why I was there was the pizza store owner. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I just told him this crazy story I told you, and I said, "I don't know, but I came here to find out." And he was just like, he wasn't sure quite what to do with me, but yeah, it really did connect me with some things that I needed to know.
Absolutely. No, that's a good story. That's a really great story. And I think it's just all about energy and frequency. I have this conversation with a lot of different people. It's just like, especially in meditations, like, I've always had this thought, it's one thing to know it and another thing to live it, but just the fact that when we're not in any kind of resistance, we allow more possibilities to go into our lives. And things that otherwise we wouldn't see are now visible. And it seems like meditation as a whole is what kind of allowed you, when you're in that state of frustration, angst, whatever, to really kind of like let go and allow new things to come to you that otherwise weren't there.
Yeah, and if I'm pretty practical minded,
Yeah.
I think that all things that even if it seems magical, I think there's a practical answer to it. And so I'm always trying to think about, well, what is the practice? And that's really what you're pointing out is yeah, your awareness. They call it the reticular activating system.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like you said you just bought a new car.
I see it all the time on the road now.
Now you see it all the time. It's like your own internal Google search. It's like when you have a familiar term, you just start seeing it everywhere. And so, yeah, in that meditation, I was putting up my Google search for certain, names and careers and categories that just I never thought about before. I didn't know that public speaking was a potential career. I've never had a corporate job, so I didn't know you went to, conferences and then they were hiring people to come in there and speak. I just didn't know that existed until after, becoming more immersed in it. Uh, so
Right.
yeah, these were all things that I needed to know.
One thing that stands out because I think I've known you for almost, it's been over 4 years. I
Yeah,
know that.
if I had to guess, I'd say 5.
Yeah, because I remember when I met you, I was right about to move to Denver. And that was in the beginning of 21. And something that you said, this might have actually, I don't remember when this came about. It might have been at your retreat man camp or something, but it was a story of that still sticks with me today, which is the idea of giving something more of your utmost presence. I forget the phrasing. It was like,
That was it. Fill your present place.
fill your present place.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the idea of, because I struggle with this a lot because I have shiny object syndrome because I can do. We've had this conversation before, but I can do anything. Like I can launch any kind of business or do anything, that's like within reason. So I'm always like, oh, I could to hear about all that. We didn't even talk about all the different things that I've launched and things I've tried since we've last spoken, Albert. But it's just like there's always been this idea in my mind. I know a lot of other people's minds that, oh, if something's not working, go into, do something else, try this, try that. But in reality, it's like if we can find a way to give something more of our presence and really focus on that, we can I feel like we can, this is like been a thought I've been meditating on recently, but we can really become passionate about anything if we just commit to it.
Well, it's that and look, you're a go-getter, right? But a lot of people can be paralyzed by that same level of choice. It's
Yeah.
paralyzation, being paralyzed by options. It's just like it's too much choice.
Yeah.
In the old days, if we were 60, 70, 80 years ago, you just would have done whatever your father or grandfather did. You
Yeah.
had no choice. So you just went and did it. Now, yeah, you can do anything. I can do anything. There's no business that I couldn't go into, but that's not necessarily helpful. The beauty of a philosophy of fill your present place. is no matter what's going on in your life, it's such an easy kind of antidote to anxiety and worry about what should you be doing. You
Hmm.
know, essentially the directive is what's on your plate right now in the moment, and whatever that is, are you truly filling, your present place with
Yeah.
what's on your plate right now? Most people don't, they want to skip ahead. They want to focus on one thing. They're hoping to kind of level up and launch to a whole new plane while they're neglecting large portions of their current responsibilities.
Yeah.
The beauty of fill your present place is if you pour yourself into what's on your plate right now, one
Mm.
is you find that you end up having extra time left over, and then whatever you choose to do with that time usually is way more productive, and then everything else in your life is being taken care of.
Yeah.
And so people who fill their present place can soon more than fill their present place. And then that's how you find the leverage, and because everybody has too much going on and not enough time. But that's kind of a almost, it's just a condition that they've put themselves in. If you actually fill your present place, you'll find that there's a surplus of time. And then everything in your life is just being taken care of as well as it can be taken care of, because you can't really get better than that.
Because it seems contradictory because it's like, oh, if I'm working on this business and I give it my presence and I won't have time for the other things. But I think what you might be trying to get at is when we fill our present space and we do what we know we're supposed to do, we have more headspace and we don't feel as guilty about leaving that other stuff behind so we can.
Yeah, you're not trying to get it's really like you eliminate this idea that there's some sort of shortcut.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if I only
Yeah.
could figure out where the shortcut is, then I could just skip ahead of this kind of mundane, part of all this stuff I don't enjoy doing. And I can get where I'm just living the part of my life that I want to, and everything is wonderful and all that. And I think that's an illusion. I think that's an illusion at some point. And so you're like trying to hurry up and get to the good part when really right now is the only part. And so if you
Mm.
could figure out how to optimize and enjoy the current, it leads to the good part, but in a more organic unfolding, you
Yeah.
know, like you're not trying to hurry up and get there. You make the current thing totally fulfilling because you're just pouring your whole being into whatever you're working on.
Yeah.
And then it's fulfilling. And you really just start getting a different perspective shift of you know you want me to give you just a real example, just so people can, this isn't so,
Yeah, of course.
airy fairy. Okay, so one of the things I have is a hair salon. And at the time when I'm sort of kind of back in the grouchy days, what I realized that I just totally neglected this place. It made money, and that's all I started it for. It was just a money extraction, project. I needed the money. I started it. I was making money, but I neglected it. I put no attention into it, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it was suffering. And so I'm like, man, I am not filling my present place there. I went up and took a fresh look at it. And, the light bulbs were burned out down the hall. The locks on the women's bathroom stalls were broken. The fountain was full of algae. And I was like, oh, this place, this looks terrible. And
Yeah.
so all I really did was I said, okay, I'm going to fill my present place here. And, it was like half empty, and, nobody was coming to rent space from me anymore. And I just started up there cleaning the fountain, changing the light bulbs. That was filling my present place. Very simple. I didn't go out and run ads or anything. I just
Mm.
started filling my present place. I was there more. And somebody was walking down the hall with his two sons looking for one of the barbers there, and the barber wasn't there. And I strike up a conversation with the guy, and it turns out his mother was a hairstylist. She was trying to move into a new place. They kept delaying the opening. She was frustrated, and like, here I have vacancies. And I said to him, hey, would you just mention to your mother that if she needed a place to work, she could start here tomorrow? He said, yeah. And you say things like that to people, and you may never hear from them again. A half hour later, I was heading out to lunch. I'm in the parking lot about to get into my truck, and this guy yells out and he said, "Oh, he has his mother on the phone right now." And I walk over there, he hands me the phone. The woman expresses her frustration, and I said, "Come see me tomorrow." She came the next day. She rented one of the largest spaces I had, and then said she mentors so many other people that need space. She ended up filling up half of my vacancies.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Like
Wow.
this was in 3 days of me going and filling my present place. Now, what would have normally happened is that I wouldn't have been up there. The fountain would still have algae in it. The light bulbs would still be burnt out, but just me filling my present place
Uh,
helped me to be there when I needed to be there to get that message to have this lady move in and just solve my problem. Honestly, from that point on, I never advertised that place again. It just word of mouth filled the rest of it up. And then I started before I was previously just their landlord. And that was really the first place where I just started coaching people for no charge, just because what I realized the problem that was going on at that salon was not that anyone was not good at their craft, like they were all great hairstylists and barbers, but no one had really ever taught them the fundamentals of business.
yeah.
And that I knew a lot about. So I just started holding classes, and they would come, to these weekly classes and just soaking up what I thought was super basic information. And they were just like, no one had ever said this to them before. And their careers took off, like their sales soared. When I say, Alec, at a minimum, their sales doubled and sometimes tripled or more, because they were just really applying fundamental business practices to something that no one had ever taught them. That's why the place ended up staying full from that point on, because they would brag to their friends it's a pretty small, tight-knit industry, about how much money they were making. And so their friends would constantly come in to try to get in the salon. I didn't even have any space for them. I had a waiting list. And, that's just the way it became from that day on.
Mhm.
And so here was the fundamental shift of filling my present place, right? That my perspective on this mundane business in my mind went from just a rent extraction exercise, right, to just rent space and please pay your rent, give me the money, and then I'm disappearing, to, oh, I see, this place is really like a business develop incubator.
Mhm.
And my job here is to pour into these people, give them an amazing place to work, but then
Yeah.
also add this extra layer of just mentoring and mentorship. And so that's how I discovered, like, oh, wow, I could teach this kind of stuff to other people. And that's really what led to being, a coach and a mentor and a speaker. And so I just had this completely different shift of
Mhm.
this. I wasn't changing businesses. It was the same business that before was just an aggravating, pain in the ass to run, because whatever, it's just rent collecting, to, oh, this place is like a beautiful personal and business development where
Yeah.
I can feel fulfilled
Yeah.
and profit.
Yeah. You assigned a purpose to it
Yeah.
beyond money, and as a result, more money came. And I think that's a common theme in a lot of things. But didn't something happen to you? By the way, great story. I always love rehearing it. Didn't something happen to you like a year ago where you had to like repeat this process?
Yeah, I did. So, you know, I started neglecting those businesses that were paying the bills
Yeah.
as I, spent more time in the coaching business. And I had managers that I'm not a micromanager, and just
Yeah.
over time, so basically over a 7-year period, I realized they had just deteriorated again without me being hands-on involved, and
Yeah.
not really looking over my manager's shoulders. So,
Yeah.
and I probably told you the story because what was interesting to me is I had been given that speech, kind of what I just told you about how filling my present place, really turned it around and also connected me with the purpose of it. And a lot of times, even though I was given that speech pretty regularly, I had only really done it one time, you know, and I started to wonder, is this story just really I lucked out and I'm really just, selling bullshit here, in this speech. It's a great story. It sounds good. It sounds like a miracle, but it's kind of a, one-off lucky thing. And so it was like, well, now I'm going to see because I have to go do it again.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I went in and again, once again, I started filling my present place. I got new managers and had to kind of mentor them up to be able to do it, and so that's really what I spent all pretty much most of 2024 doing was filling my present place with those. And so here I am, April of 2025, and yeah, they're all humming along again on autopilot.
Right.
So it's I was able to do it twice. So, I know really
Not
now,
as easily, but it still happened.
no, it wasn't hard because here's the beauty of fill your present place. And I should probably just write that as my next book.
Yeah.
Here's the beauty of it. You don't have to overwork to fill your present place. You don't have to work 80 hours a week. You don't have to become more disciplined or anything. You just, you just, you just look and see what's on your plate and you just pour yourself into that. That's it. So it's just like a day's work a day.
And not procrastinating. I think that's key.
Well,
Because
yeah, because if you're procrastinating, it means you're not feeling it, right? So you're just doing what you need to do, but you're not overdoing it. And believe me, even when I'm working my hardest, I never work more than 4 or 5 hours a day, and I never have. I mean, I know a lot of people do, and it's just not in me. I'm kind of a sprinter. I can just do a lot in a short time, and then I want to take it easy and enjoy myself and have some leisure and relaxation time and thinking time for myself. So, yeah, I, I can feel my present place even when I'm, going back in and remodeling something like that or overseeing that. I can still do it in a reasonable time. I'm not working till midnight at night, neglecting my family. I can do it within working hours.
yeah.
Um, but it just doesn't take as much as you think. And so
Mhm.
it's like a digestible amount of work to just get all my work done and fill my present place. So I'm not overworking. So it did take a year of dedicated, focus on it, but I wasn't killing myself doing it. But
Yeah.
it did turn around again. And again, humming along once again. And so now I know that it really is true. Yeah, yeah, it's one thing to preach philosophy, but it's another thing when you have to live it and you find out if what you're telling everybody else. Oh, it does actually work even for even for me.
Yeah. I can say in my own experience, it works too. Like it could even be just like if I'm distracted by multiple different things and I just focus in on the thing that I know I should be focusing on, more opportunities come to me that otherwise weren't there. But I wanna change the topic a little bit and talk about your book. So is this the first book you've launched?
Yeah, this is my first book.
Yeah, so what was the inspiration around it?
So let me just hold it up in case somebody's actually watching this. It's called
Hmm.
What's on Your Back Burner? Using Dormant Desire to Relight Your Fire.
Yeah.
So it's on Amazon. Uh, you know, After coaching people for 7 years, and look, in order to coach people effectively, you have to do your own personal work. You have to have your shit together if you're really going to be a believable coach and give people advice or mentorship or guidance
Oh,
for them to really succeed. You can't really. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do fake it, but essentially, I think most coaches are they're teaching their clients what they learn themselves. And so the work that I had to go through to really be as successful as I, was I really just had to uncover a lot of subconscious conflicts is the easiest way that I can explain it. I started realizing that every time I really leveled up in my life and I was able to really shift into a new productive plane of existence, the thing that had been in the way was always like an unseen uh, uh, conflict, an inner conflict that I was completely unaware of. And when I was able to reveal the inner conflict and resolve it, then I
Yeah.
would just easily shift into like a different level.
Yeah.
And so as I was coaching people, it just became obvious to me over time. I was like, wow, everybody's really got the same problem. They don't know it, but this is really what's keeping them from applying themselves in the way they want to. So
Yeah.
the book about what's on the back burner, it's really about what have you put on the back burner that you know you want to do, you suspect you might be capable of it, but you for whatever reason you just don't pursue it.
Yeah.
And there's a magic in whatever you answer because I think whatever that is holds a lot of promise for you. Because in order to do it, you do have to resolve all of these inner conflicts. So,
Yes.
so the essence of the book is using this sort of unpursued goal, or maybe something you're struggling with or something you're stuck with. It's using that as a key to kind of unlock what are the hidden reasons why you're really not doing it. And the process in the book, it just brings them right out, in the first phase of it, it just pours out onto the page and you go like, oh God, yeah, this is really the real reason um,
Yeah.
that I don't do it. And now everybody has reasons they think they're not doing it, and I call those very damn good reasons, but they're not the real reason. The real reason is something that you're unaware of until you go through something like this, a self-reflective exercise where you're revealing the true inner conflicts that are right now just hiding from you.
Yeah. What you would probably define as shadow work, right?
It's shadow work. And some people are familiar with shadow work, and you can start reading about it, and sometimes it feels like, oh, you got to be a, clinical psychologist to understand this. So I wanted to give a very practical, easy, approachable framework to understand what shadow work is. And here's the simplest kind of way I can lay it out. Your shadow is just the part of yourself that has learned lessons while you were growing up,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in a more immature state when you were younger, and you just think you've learned these lessons, and they're just kind of embedded in your subconscious programming.
Yeah.
It's like an old, Microsoft Windows operating system that just has been, updated and updated and updated on top of each other, but no one ever really goes in and deals with the kind of the earlier level code.
Mm-hmm.
But yet it has a lot to do with how you do things, what you're willing to do, what you procrastinate on. And you think it's just because you're lazy or a procrastinator or you don't have the time or money or resources. But the truth is, everything you're not doing that you think you want to do, it always comes down to an inner conflict that you're not aware of. So
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
first step is to find out what they are.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. You want me to give you just like a very simple example, just so
Sure.
people can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is gonna sound crazy, but when I was really getting into my career of speaking, I was, entering speech contests and things, and I would never practice, I would come up with my speech, and in the contest, I would get up there and I would just, when the audience heard it, is really the first time I'm hearing it all put together myself. So,
Yeah.
it's not polished, but it would be good enough to kind of win the lower levels of the contest and usually make it to the finals. But I would never win the ultimate competition. I'd come in like fifth place, sixth place, third place was my best finish. And at some point, I'm like, what is it about this that's keeping me from doing it? Well, it turns out that when I was like 10, 11 years old, my mom and dad were divorced. And on the weekends, my dad would come pick us up, and we would go have a great time with him all weekend. And then he'd drop us back off at our mom's house. Well, some weekends he just wouldn't show up, and my brother and I, we were all eager and ready to go have fun, go to
Yeah.
the park, trampolines, ride go-karts, and he's a no-show.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that disappointment, right, was so painful that really unbeknownst to me, especially as an adult man, now I'm discovering this in my 50s, uh, that really the discomfort and the pain of disappointment was so great that subconsciously I just told myself to avoid disappointment at all costs. And so now how does that translate? So here I am in these speaking contests,
Yeah.
and when I would got, say, fifth place, I wasn't disappointed because I could tell myself, well,
You
you,
didn't prepare for
you
it.
didn't practice.
Yeah.
These other guys rehearsed for hundreds of hours, and you were able to get in here and wing it and get fifth place, you see, so there was no disappointment.
Uh,
I was less, worried about not getting the trophy than the fact that, oh yeah, yeah, I'm not disappointed in my loss.
yeah.
So once I was aware of that inner conflict, I said, at my age, I can handle a little disappointment. And so for the first time, I really rehearsed and practiced, and I made it all the way to the district championship. And if I had won, I would go on to they call it like the World Series of public speaking or whatever.
Mm.
And I came in second place.
Nice.
And so I didn't get to go to that, but it's the highest I had ever finished. But more importantly, I knew when that speech contest was over, I knew 100% that's the first time I had really left it all on the field, the
Yeah.
first time. And I had been doing it for years and years and years, but, I didn't really get to that level until I, discovered and resolved this inner conflict of that, yeah, whatever I'm doing, I'm avoiding disappointment. I mean, think of how much that would set you back if you avoided anything that you would need to attempt that could lead to disappointment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I've accomplished anything with that mindset. And I had no idea, Alec. I mean, seriously, I must have been, 54, 55 years old before realizing. And it wasn't like, anything really that terrible happened to me. It wasn't like I was abused as a child or whatever. It was,
Mm.
my dad didn't come pick me up and my weekend got ruined. But yet somehow that lodged in as a major hurdle to my own success.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. It's just like the young minds are so malleable, that like the littlest things can go a really long way over time. So, Albert, I got one last question for you. Let's say it's the end of your life, done everything you wanted to do. And however, there's nothing to show for anything that you've done. There's no podcast, there's no book, there's no Zoom recordings or anything like that. But you have a megaphone, you can talk to the entire world.
Yeah.
Share three things that you know to be true about the world around you. What do you tell them?
Well, you're saying I wish they could read my book, honestly, because I put it all in there. But essentially, what I would tell them is, it's kind of part of what I just told you.
Uh,
The root of whatever's keeping you back, for
mm-hmm.
sure, is an inner conflict.
Yeah,
Uh, the second thing would be, and this is really what would happen in the second phase, if somebody went through my process, is that they would open up a dialogue with these subconscious parts of themselves because uh, that little, whatever you want to call it, my inner child or my version of my younger self, all it really wanted to do was to be heard and to talk to me and to kind of fill me in on what was going on. So
yeah,
you're really only like a conversation away from understanding yourself on a level that you probably can't even grasp how
yeah,
well. So the inner conflict leads to conversation, with yourself. And then the third and final thing, is really the third phase of the book is uh, you can actually make a deal with your shadow. You can make a deal, and you and I have done this work before. Uh,
yeah.
you can make a deal with your inner shadow, and you usually hear people say, "Oh, we're our own worst enemy," right?
Mm.
You can make an ally out of your own worst enemy. It's just a
Yeah,
shadow character. And so just imagine if you no longer worked as hard as you're doing working against yourself and with all aspects of your being are
yeah,
allies
yeah,
working in concert to do what you want to do. Like literally people can accomplish and achieve anything they want to do as long as they just align these forces in the right place. It's just aligning all of your inner forces in an allied kind of mentality. Uh, and then the actual tasks itself, it they're just easy.
Yeah.
You know, the hard part, the hard part is just, you know, fighting with ourselves
Oh,
through
yeah.
inner conflict. If you get rid of that, just everything just kind of can just roll out and be easy. And so I would want them to know it. And here's the reason why, because if they don't know this, they're going to spend their entire lives really with an inner turmoil that is just completely unnecessary. And you don't need therapy, and you don't need a new life. You don't need another chance. You don't need more money. You don't need to live in a different country or a different city or a different neighborhood. All you really need to do is, you know, calm the inner conflict, and you can really make anything happen wherever you stand, wherever you are, you know, from the point
Mhm.
of your present place. Like it's the only place you're ever going to be able to start from, and everyone has the opportunity. So to me, the biggest tragedy, Alec, is that you could go through life not knowing that you have everything you need right there and you're in the perfect place to start, and then
Yeah.
squander it or get old and die and just miss the whole opportunity. To me, that would be just the biggest waste. I don't want people to waste their lives.
Yeah. And gosh, I mean, this one's so deep in so many different things. And it's one thing to like know it and another thing to actually live by it, you know? And I see it where I live a lot. People chasing the next thing, I mean, I've seen it in my own life plenty of times where it's just like, oh, I'm not 100% thrilled with what I'm doing. This isn't working. I'm gonna try something else. I need a new strategy. I need a new tactic. I need a new offer. When in reality, it's just like, oh my gosh, if I just worked on myself a little bit, then I wouldn't have all these things. But like it and a lot of other people I see like, oh my gosh, like the amount of people that either are buying things they can't afford, or like plastic surgery is really big where I live, you know, especially with women, um, alcohol, substance abuse. Like there's endless, it all falls under, I feel like, escapism. Because I don't know if we can differentiate between good escapism and bad escapism, but it's just like, escapism could be getting drunk, or it could be starting a new business. Like there's all these different things. Like we're all trying to like find answers, either cope or find other ways to achieve something, when in reality, like if we just filled our present place more, meditated, we could find these, there would be nothing there is nothing to find out.
Well, here's the what's common about all of those things, right?
Mhm.
It's all an attempt to manipulate the way we feel.
Yeah.
So that's what most people are doing with all of their time. They're manipulating,
Hmm.
they're trying to manipulate the way they feel. They don't really enjoy 100%, or they haven't, they imagine they can feel better, and they are trying to find a strategy in order to make themselves feel better than they do at the moment. And so you're right, some are productive, you know, starting businesses and all. And what I do love about business is it's a great kind of grinding stone to like sharpen. I think you do have to become an evolved version of yourself to be able to pull your business off. So I love, you know, using business as a tool for
Yeah.
personal improvement.
Yeah.
And then the people who are doing it in unproductive, more destructive ways, yeah, it's just like uh, it's like numbing, you know, the pain of
It's a
not.
dog chasing its own tail.
Well, it's just like, you know, you can numb a little bit temporarily because you just don't feel good about like where you are and where you're going, or if you're doing the right thing. But it's all just manipulating, try an attempt to manipulate, you
Yeah.
know, how you feel.
Yeah.
Uh, so hey, what's the hack, right? Um, what if you what if you just didn't label feelings as being good or bad? You kind of just accepted whatever was coming.
Yeah.
Um, and there was you didn't see things that you labeled as bad as being bad. It's just like discomfort, and that's what all that shadow is. It's all the parts of yourself that really remember the pain and the discomfort, and that you don't want to go there. So you know, imagine by the time, you know, you're still young. Imagine by the time you're 40 years old, how many things you've come across in your life that were uh, uncomfortable, painful, you know, not pleasant, that your subconscious mind is saying, Alec, let's see if we can avoid anything that looks, tastes, or smells like this ever again. You know, what ends up happening is there's so many mines in the minefield of things you're trying to avoid. Your life is just kind of small, and you know, you got to kind of tiptoe through it. Uh, and so that's why most people are just so twisted up that they're trying to avoid the minefield of anything they've ever experienced that was, you know, uncomfortable, painful, whatever. But what if you could just like be okay with all that? And that is part of the book is, you know, this idea of like, normally we'd rather avoid the feeling of something, but what if you could say, you know what, I'm willing to experience this feeling. If you can get to the point where you're willing to experience the discomfort or the pain or whatever, there's nothing you can't do. And so
Oh,
really all you're doing by not doing what you're supposed to be doing or what you want to be doing,
yeah.
you're just avoiding feelings.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, and that was something I learned recently, which is we're not really afraid of anything. We're afraid of how it's going to feel. If
Yes.
we don't have any attachment to the feelings, it doesn't really matter.
No, not at all. And you become, I don't want to say invincible because I'm probably overselling it a little bit, but that's the pathway forward. You know, it's a willingness to feel. If you have a willingness to feel, really there's nothing off the table. The people that you see that are killing it or phenomenally successful, they've somehow found some kind of hack over that. Like they are willing to feel whatever. And so that's why they can just like
It
bulldoze through.
depends. I think it really depends. If they're killing it in all areas of life, yes, but I've worked with, especially with what I'm selling right now, I've worked with a lot of like, everybody's like, most of my clients are much more financially successful than I am by a wide margin. And I see that with some of them, they're so into what they're doing that I know that there's some trauma that motivated them to get to where they are, and it's still contributing to what they're doing today.
Yeah, because you know, let's say you're really enjoying making money and then you're neglecting some other more balanced areas of your life. It's because, you know, the success in their career or business makes them feel good, and then facing or dealing with the other stuff doesn't. So then they kind of become workaholics. Um,
Yeah. But the people that have balance in a lot of different areas, I think the main ones are going to be your health, your family, and your finances. And I feel like if you have all of those in place, you probably have a spiritual component in your life as well. The people that I know, very few people that are balanced in all those different areas. And yeah, I would say the people that are have definitely found a way to overcome the feelings that you speak about.
yeah, it's all about this is all we're doing, Alec, is we're attempting to manipulate our experience, you know, our feelings on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, and you know, hey, it's good to know because if people are doing something that make no sense to you, if you went and talked to them, you could dig it out of them, and you say, "Oh, I see. This is what they're avoiding or don't like to feel or
I
whatever."
see it. Yeah, like I don't know if I've just gotten more intuitive over the years, but when I hear about somebody making some kind of decision, I'm like, okay, like I think I know where this is coming from, but I get to know them a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, I understand this. And I feel a lot of people share a lot with me because I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I would say I'm a better than average conversationalist, so I feel like when I dig into people, it all roots back to similar feelings and stuff like that. But anyway, Albert, really appreciate the conversation. Where can the people find you?
Let's see, they go on Amazon. They can also go to backburnerbook.com, and that has all my resources, worksheets from the book, a link to buy the book. There's videos on there that they might find helpful. There's a way to, you know, click on make a schedule a, you know, some kind of a Zoom call with me. So probably easiest is backburnerbook.com. It's got my email on there and everything. And that's really my focal point for this year anyway, is to do workshops and get the word out on the book. And hopefully it ends up in everyone who does read it calls me back with some hey man, this is what I discovered, and I had no idea this is what was really going on in my life. And you know what? That's the payoff for me. When I know somebody could just read even get through the first exercise, they are going to have an epiphany of something that they did not know about themselves. So my goal is to get as many people, I know not everyone's going to finish a book, and it's a pretty easy read. It's fairly it's not thick. I don't read thick books, so I didn't write a thick book. But if they can get to the point where they do the first exercise, they would definitely know something about themselves and their inner conflicts that they're totally not aware of right now.
Cool. Robert, thanks so much for being on the show.
All right, Alec, thanks for reaching out, man. Good seeing you again.